Even though the airport is strangely empty, which was expected, it still feels so weird being in a public place for the first time in over 3 weeks. We are Kara and Nate. We've been traveling the world full-time for the last 4 years. And like many of you, the coronavirus has completely changed our day-to-day life. A few weeks ago, we barely escaped a lockdown in Manila that could have prevented us from leaving the Philippines indefinitely. In mid-March, when the virus had just been declared a pandemic, things felt even more uncertain than they are today.
What are we thinking?
And given the information we had at the time, we decided to take a short flight to Singapore and just stay put, which is where we have spent the last 3 weeks in voluntary self-quarantine. Since arriving here in Singapore, it has been a roller coaster of emotions. On one hand, we've been super grateful for this time to slow down because our lives have been so fast-paced for the last 4 years. But on the other hand, we feel like we've been living in this weird limbo where every single morning we wake up and have this super long conversation about whether or not we're making the right decision by staying here in Singapore, which typically leads to us consuming way too much world news.
Up until this week, the decision had seemed pretty obvious. Our international health insurance covered us here in Singapore, cases were spiking back in the US, and Singapore was being used as a model for how other countries should deal with the coronavirus. However, things have been changing this week. The CDC issued a level 3 warning for Singapore, which means that our health insurance no longer covers us here if we were to get the virus. Plus, in recent days, Singapore has seen a significant rise in the number of cases, and the country has entered a period of lockdown. We had already been questioning whether or not we were making the right decision by staying here. And then yesterday we got an email from the US Embassy, which basically said there aren't going to be any repatriation flights back to the US, and if you want to make sure that you can get home, you need to be on one of these 21 flights occurring over the next 4 days. So, given all the changes, yesterday we were forced to make one of the hardest decisions that we've ever made. Today, we're flying home.
We were fully prepared to stay in Singapore indefinitely. We had accepted that. So we tried to extend our visas and they were declined, which meant that we were gonna have to leave Singapore sooner rather than later. And we figured while there were still commercial flights available, we would go ahead and make the journey home now.
That's pretty crazy. There are 5 flights leaving out of Terminal 1 at Changi Airport for the next 7 hours. There's nobody here. Nope.
Even though the airport is strangely empty, which was expected, it still feels so weird being in a public place for the first time in over 3 weeks.
We haven't left our hotel room except to go to the grocery store and exercise. So anything outside of that just feels completely foreign at this point.
Surprisingly, we found a lounge that's open, and not surprisingly, we are the only ones in here.
This all just feels so weird and wrong, but oddly familiar at the same time. Wow. We were joined by a couple other people, but it's still weirdly empty. All right, we have officially started the challenge of not touching our face for the next 30 hours.
It is so much harder than it seems.
This will be one major takeaway for me from this period of time, is just how much I unnecessarily touch my face constantly.
My nose and my eyes always itch, always. Our first flight is 6 hours to Tokyo, Japan, because it is one of the only Asia hubs that is still allowing transit passengers. what we can see, every single person on this flight is wearing a face mask. Everyone has their own row. And there are even some empty rows.
To put that in perspective, we're on a 777 that can hold over 300 people, and there are about 40 on this flight.
Leave your baggage when you evacuate.
It is 11 p.m. We're gonna try to get some sleep.
ご事業画面、コントローラーを元の位置にお戻しください。ベルト帯点灯中はお膝の上のお戻し。簡単航空とのコードシェアリングをご利用ください。Cough HK。
So we started to get off the plane, but then they made everybody go sit back down.
A flight attendant told us that they're doing health checks for everyone entering the airport, and a flight of 200 people landed before us, so we're just waiting.
Also, it's 4:30 a.m. On a positive note, this is the best I've ever slept in economy. Having 4 entire seats to yourself really helps.
Our second niece was just born. Oh.
Know what baby that is? It's Hosanna. It's your baby sister. Do you want to kiss her? Oh, best hug. Oh.
We're currently at the 2-hour mark. 2 hours since we landed. So this really isn't a big deal. It's either sit on the plane or sit in the airport. But we have 3 hours until our next flight leaves. We should still have plenty of time. It's just the unknown.
It's time. Let's go.
All right, 2.5 hours later, we're getting off the plane. Now let's just hope we pass our health screening and don't get quarantined in Tokyo.
It's the little victories in life these days, like disembarking a plane.
There were 6 of us on that flight who had a connecting flight, so who weren't staying here in Japan, and we're currently all being escorted through the airport, and I'm not exactly sure where. We haven't been screened at all. I guess since we're just transiting through the airport, we didn't have to go through the health screening process, and I think we're going to a lounge, first class lounge, because it's the only one that's open.
Today has been so weird. We just went from waiting on a plane for a health check to being escorted through the airport to the first class lounge. The business class lounge was closed, and so we got access to the first class lounge. Today has been a mixture of so many emotions. Like, it goes from sadness to fear to these little moments of joy. I'm so happy right now. This is so crazy. We had no idea what we were missing sitting on that plane.
Thank you. This is so sad. That was a great last lounge. Like, I don't want to be traveling right now, but at the same time, I don't know when we're gonna get to do it again, so I'm trying to just like soak up every moment of it.
I really can't imagine a better last experience in an airport. I mean, for who knows how long. I just don't know how to feel today. It's so confusing. All right, 11.5 hours till we're back in the US. There are a lot more people on this flight than the last one, but I think we're still each gonna have our own row, hopefully.
As refreshments after the seatbelt sign is on.
hours later, we have landed in Dallas. So we had a 2-hour layover here in Dallas, and I was worried that we weren't going to make our connecting flight because, like,
we sat on the plane for 2 hours in Japan.
It's been the exact opposite experience. Nobody checked our temperature. There was nobody in line at customs. There was nobody in line at baggage, and we made it into the country in like 2 seconds. This is just not what I expected.
No. They asked us if we had been to China or Iran or Europe, but that's it.
I feel like it's like, have you stepped outside? Oh, okay.
We could have easily been like very sick and nobody would have known.
All right, we have about an hour and a half till our next flight boards, our last flight.
So all the lounges are closed, understandably. So this is another one of those super joyful moments in this weird day. It has been so long since I've had this.
There are so many planes parked out on the runway.
Last flight, 2 hours to Nashville. So I don't normally travel with the fanny pack, but I've been carrying it because I wanted access to my wipes, my Germ-X, and my vitamin C at all times. It's been really nice. I think this is the quietest plane we've ever been on.
Tissue when you cough or sneeze. Please refrain from placing used cleaning wipes, tissues, and other disposable items in the seat back pocket.
And we are back in Nashville. Everything went surprisingly smooth given the current situation.
I feel like we've said this a million times today, but it just feels so weird, especially being back in the Nashville airport, because we only come home like a handful of times a year. And so anytime we're here, it's like really exciting because like our family's here waiting for us.
Welcome to Nashville International Airport.
Or it's Christmas or like a family trip.
Now we're going to quarantine ourselves for 2 weeks.
And we don't know when we'll be back. Like we have no idea how long we're gonna be here.
I was getting a little sad as the plane was landing, going, who knows how long it's gonna be before we can do this again. With all of that said, we are very, very grateful to be back in Nashville. So our goal is to physically interact with as few of people as possible over the next couple of weeks. So instead of having a family member pick us up or getting in an Uber or something like that, Jordan dropped off his truck for us.
Thanks, Jordan.
Like beauty.
There's soap in the car. Toasted vanilla chai.
Let's go. Home, kind of. Oh, we're back in Tennessee. Listen to country music, driving my pickup truck.
Wow.
This is great.
Oh, sweet home. This is our home for the next month. It felt so weird booking an Airbnb in our hometown, but we usually stay with our parents when we come home, and since we're quarantining, we needed our own space.
But now we're literally 5 minutes down the road from both of our parents' houses.
And it's huge.
It's probably the biggest space we've ever had to ourselves during our 6 years of marriage. I'm just so grateful that we made it here. I figured there was a pretty good chance that we got stuck in Tokyo, a small chance that we got stuck in Dallas.
I was certain one of our flights would get canceled.
And it all went so smooth. And ever since we booked this, I've just been so excited about it. And I just didn't want it to be taken away from me. Don't take this huge space in the woods away from me during a pandemic. Our bodies think it's 3 a.m., so things will just get weird from here if we keep the camera rolling. Ugh. We made it.
I swear my nose itches right now. I love Japan.
I thought there were going to be people in hazmat suits. Like,
Yeah. I mean, they asked
that was
us.
a temperature gun. Listen to country music, driving my pickup truck. Why that made you laugh so much?
Because we are.
I thought it was kind of funny. I didn't think it was.
I think I'm delirious.
It might be. How long has it been since we spent a month
Anyway.
here? Anywhere. At least a year.
I think it was 2 Christmases ago. We were here for a month.
Wow. But even when we come here, it's not like we're settled.
Yeah.
Because we're moving back and forth between our parents' houses. And here we're like, this is ours
Yeah.
for a month. It's like we're adults.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Let's go to bed.
Let's go.